On Tech Today, we like to focus on the innovators, and I have with me a true innovator in the gaming space, Vikram, co-founder of Games 24x7. Vikram, what a pleasure to have you with us on Tech Today.
Thank you for having me.
When we're talking about Make in India for the rest of the world, it should be conducive to Make in India. But the gaming space has this little bit of a shadow looming on top for the past few years, and regionally as well. We've seen what's happened in Karnataka when it comes to particular regulations and legislation. How do you, as Games 24x7, look at the regulatory climate?
So on the one hand, India has the most enviable history of jurisprudence when it comes to gaming. We have Supreme Court judgments going back all the way to the 1950s, which draw out clear distinction between games of skill and games of chance. One being called, that is games of chance being called gambling, the other actually being entitled constitutional rights under Article 19(1)(g). So the jurisprudence is very strong, very clear. Then you have, Rummy being ruled as a game of skill by the Supreme Court recently, fantasy being ruled to be a game of skill by the Supreme Court. But then you do have, when it comes to state level policy making, I would say the best way to describe it is some sort of confusion, and also a lack of recognition, I think, in some sense of how huge the space can be. Today, we are a $2 billion market. By any meaningful estimate, we're talking $25 to $30 billion by 2030. Today, the industry employs about 50,000 people. That could well be 1 million people by 2030. And I think that's the point we're trying to make to both central and state governments, that, this, from a judicial legal perspective, we are legal, but we need that clarity from the government. And I think the best starting point is the central government itself. I think we're off to a great start with the creation of the AVGC task force. Thank you to the Honorable Prime Minister for that. But I think as I said, as you rightly pointed out, great potential and the ability to turn India, into a global gaming hub. But it's certainly going to require both the central government and the state governments to provide some clarity, both to entrepreneurs and to investors.
Yeah, someone who's been a student of the law and then a self-confessed tech geek, when I have these conversations with some of you all in the gaming space, it's oddly reminiscent how we were chatting about crypto and blockchain and some of the similar issues, right? Spreading awareness, educating people about it, genuinely getting down and deconstructing it and explaining to policymakers how that tech works and then what the potential is once it's monetized. I feel like it's a similar bucket or a similar set of challenges that both these sectors face.
It's anything new, right? I think the Ubers and the Olas of the world have been through that. They have had plenty of speed bumps along the way. The Flipkarts and the Amazons of the world have been through that. And I think it's generally the nature of new industries. This is the trajectory for gaming, in particular real money gaming in the West, is not very different. It's generally been bumpy, but I think eventually regulators in the West have come around to recognize that the best way to go, particularly when all of this is available online, is regulating, not banning. One of the really poor outcomes, I think, that occurred with some of the bans that were put in place in the southern states, most of which have now been reversed by the high courts of those states, was that you had proliferation in illegal gambling, and a lot of it which comes from outside India. So it's lost employment, lost revenues, lost ability to compete in global markets. And so I think the reasons are numerous for the governments, both the central and the state governments, to come forward and work with us in regulating the space. And this is a very unusual situation where we're actually going to the government and saying, we want you to regulate us, we want you to streamline things, we want you to provide clarity, and we're willing to have our hands tied a little bit, because that's going to help the industry, it's going to help the consumer, it's going to help the government.
Interesting, Vikram. Thanks so much for joining us on Tech Today. You're on a segment called The Innovators, and we're going to actually end this by saying, well, thank you so much. Let's hope that this sector grows and the tech geeks and gamers enjoy it even more. I think it's a fascinating space to be. You keep innovating and game on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aayush.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.